sworn enemy of lying Papasi Smugglers Group. Think if I seem a little bit out of sorts, it's because there was, in fact, an invasion on our own set.
It's not an invasion. Why is this an invasion?
Show it, ladies and gentlemen.
I've been here 23 years, and this is an invasion. You own this place now.
That's a very good point. Oh, you're in Washington now, though.
Well, great to see you in person.
Thank you,
great show as always. And you actually have a calendar or time up there that you steal from my show. And
you actually owe us 32 seconds. Lily, our stage manager,
that is so not true.
For 2 years.
I'm going to buy you a calculator so we can get this straight. That's your Christmas gift this year. Great show.
Thanks,
good to see you. All right, welcome to Hannity. Today, I had the honor of traveling with our First Lady, Melania Trump, as she visited brave U.S. service members on 2 military bases and aboard the USS George H.W. Bush, many who won't be with their families for Christmas. Heroes that will protect our freedoms as we enjoy the Christmas holidays. In just moments, we're going to show you the highlights of that interview and an exclusive one-on-one interview with the First Lady herself. Please stay tuned. Also, tonight we're going to bring you the latest on the sentencing of Michael Cohen, and we will reveal disturbing details surrounding what is really absolutely shameful treatment of a 33-year veteran of this country, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Also, over at Conspiracy TV, MSNBC, Liberal Morning Joe, well, part of that team is in very hot water tonight. We'll tell you why. And also later, a dangerous terrorist on the loose in France. We will bring you an update on that manhunt. And some migrants, actually from Honduras, are now demanding reparations from you, the U.S. taxpayers. All right, buckle up. From D.C., the swamp, tonight's breaking news opening monologue. All right, today I was fortunate enough to witness the bravery, the courage, the might of the U.S. military firsthand as I traveled with our First Lady, Melania Trump, to Joint Base Anacostia and Joint Base Langley, and then to the awe-inspiring aircraft carrier, the USS George H.W. Bush, where I had the opportunity to sit down with our First Lady. Take a look. Stay true to myself. You use that term a lot. Now, why don't you expand on that? What does that mean, considering, and I'll ask you about your roots a little bit, but that stuck out to me.
I do what I think it's right. I know I will get the criticism from the public or from the media, but I will do what is right and what I feel it's right for the country and for the people. And that's what I say. I want to stay true to myself and listen myself and what to do and what is right, what is wrong, and live meaningful life every day.
We're going to have that full interview in just a few minutes, along with our highlights of an incredible trip. Where do you see these planes landing and taking off? It's unbelievable. First, we do have updates on the Mueller partisan witch hunt. Today, Michael Cohen, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison after he pled guilty to tax evasion, making false statements on a bank loan application, lying to Congress about building a building project that never even got off the ground, and a questionable campaign finance violation. Notice something missing? No Trump-Russia collusion. None. Again, it's also important to note, Michael Cohen does not have a cooperation agreement with federal prosecutors. And meanwhile, tonight, another top target of this Mueller witch hunt, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, is asking a federal judge for leniency and no jail time. He pleaded guilty to lying to investigators, but only after legal bills wrecked his family finances, forced this man, 33-year veteran, 5 years of combat, to have to sell his home, and probably was most likely threatening punitive action against his son and his business partner. He fell on the sword like probably 99% of fathers would do. And tonight we are learning some disgusting new details surrounding how Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was treated by top federal officials. Now, according to Flynn's sentencing request, then Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe pressured then National Security Advisor Flynn not to have a lawyer present during a seemingly relaxed, casual meeting with the FBI, the one that they said he lied at, except nobody believed he lied. Flynn agreed to sit down without attorneys present and was then subsequently charged with lying during that very meeting. Now, keep in mind, Andrew McCabe was ultimately fired from the FBI for him lying to the Bureau, and he is currently facing no charges. According to FoxNews.com, Flynn's filing also seemingly demonstrates that the FBI took a significantly more aggressive tack in handling the Flynn interview than it did during other similar matters. For example, quote, no one interviewed during the FBI's Clinton email investigation was hit with false statement charges, though investigators believed those witnesses were untruthful. Big difference. And so as we now know, that is called the two-tiered justice system. And by the way, this might be part of the worst part of Flynn's political persecution. The agents interviewing Flynn, they never thought he lied. That is such a miscarriage of justice and an abuse of power corruption scandal, one of the biggest in American history, as we've been telling you. And of course, you're not likely to hear about any of this on any other media, especially over at Conspiracy TV MSNBC, especially not on the liberal Morning Joe show, where the hosts literally spend hours every single day trying to outdo themselves, trading insults about Donald Trump and the Trump family and anybody associated with Trump. Now, it's a pretty sad and scary way to start your morning, but today, co-host Mika Brzezinski went too far. He used this pretty disgusting slur just before 9 a.m. Take a look.
Understand that Donald Trump doesn't care. Heilman makes a good point. He doesn't care. But why doesn't Mike Pompeo care right now? Are the pathetic deflections that we just heard when he appeared on Fox and Friends, is that a patriot speaking or a wannabe dictator's butt boy? I'm dead serious. I'm asking, are these the words of a patriot?
Wow. Questioning his patriotism? Unbelievable. Over the top. And then following the show on the other part of the issue, and she issued an apology on Twitter about her language. Some bad choice of words. I should have said water boy, like for football teams or something like that. Yeah, Mika, pretty bad choice of words. But we're consistent on this program. We don't call for boycotts. We don't call for firings of any kind. In fact, when Mika's colleague, MSNBC host Joy Reid, when she was in hot water over homophobic and conspiracy-filled blog that she had, we never called for her to be fired or for her show to be boycotted. People do make mistakes. People are not perfect. And I think we're all human. And I don't believe anybody's career, in my honest opinion, should be ruined over a stupid mistake. And by the way, she's no fan of mine, and neither is Liberal Joe. And I doubt they would do this for any opinion host here at Fox News. But it's sad to see Trump derangement syndrome claim yet another victim. And of course, there were many warning signs as the anti-Trump vitriol got worse and worse and worse. Let's take a look.
It is clear the president is stunningly ignorant. Probably the most ignorant president we will ever have. He's ignorant. He's warped. He's obsessed with money and sex. And he finds his power through those two things. He will be forever remembered as the president who traumatized little children. That's his brand now. He's the president who purposefully traumatized babies and children. It's very, almost caveman-like.
Have you seen that?
It really is. He's like Fred Flintstone running the country. I don't think he has the moral compass to make a decision based on our own national security. To anybody who works inside the White House, works on the national security team, works in the State Department, at some point, you are working for a president who is not fit to lead, who's going to do something crazy in 5 minutes, 1 hour, tonight or tomorrow. Like, what more do you need to hear from him to start thinking 25th Amendment or something else?
We fixed it. We'll have more on this later in the show, but first we need to turn to breaking news in France. Widespread manhunt underway for the gunman in Tuesday's terror attack at a French Christmas market that left at least 2 dead. Now the 29-year-old suspect, identified right there as Sharif Chaket, allegedly shouting Allahu Akbar as he opened fire before escaping from the scene in a taxi. We're also learning tonight he had a long criminal record, and he was already on the authorities' radar for connections to radical Islam. So far, 5 other people with alleged ties to the suspect have now been detained. And even more frightening is that French authorities admit that he may have already slipped across the border into Germany. We'll keep you updated. We'll pray for the victims. Scary times. Make no mistakes. Attack like this, all these attacks underscore the need for safety and security, like places, at our southern border, where we have caught people with terrorist ties trying to get into this country, where tonight migrant groups are literally, the ones, women and children that the media kept telling us about. Remember, they were trying to march to the U.S. consulate over Tijuana, demanding President Trump either let them into the country, or now they want us to pay them $50,000 in reparations to go home. Pay you to go home so you don't break our laws and don't disrespect our sovereignty. One group organizer arguing that it may seem like a lot of money to you, but it's a small sum compared to everything the United States has stolen from Honduras. Now, look, we all know probably the vast majority of people that come from poor countries with no opportunity, no hope for their children or grandchildren are good people searching for a better life. But demanding entry or pay you or will overwhelm your immigration system, there's no way to act to demonstrate merit to come into this country. It's also a massive security risk. As the San Diego Tribune is reporting, thousands of migrants are now unaccounted for, writing, quote, in the group of unaccounted migrants, about 3,500 are presumed to have either crossed illegally into the U.S., moved to other Mexican border cities, or simply fallen through the cracks. That is why the president is standing firm, rightly so, on the border wall, forging ahead on keeping his promise to the forgotten men and women of this country to preserve our nation's safety and security first. Remember, a wall will literally help people on both sides be safer. And then, of course, the wall will have a big door, and you can come in legally, as the president has said. But we do have the right to vet anyone that wants to come into this country, because keeping out potential terrorists, human traffickers, drug traffickers, violent cartel members is a huge #1 priority for our national security. All right, we have a lot to get to tonight, including our interview with the First Lady. Joining us now, the author of the bestseller, Why We Fight, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka, and the author of another bestseller, The Deep State, Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. I read this about General Flynn. Okay, Michael Cohen admitted to these things. I feel sorry for him and his family tonight, but he admitted to these acts that he was responsible for. He's changed his position on a lot of issues. Now the media, they only want to believe the version that helps their narrative.
Right.
That's fine. That's politics. But he was pushed into, General Flynn, a 33-year war hero, 5 years in combat, forced in, told you don't need a lawyer. The FBI doesn't believe he lied. And then he's charged with lying anyway because he's bankrupt, can't fight it, and they're threatening probably his kid.
This is classic entrapment, Sean. If you listen to the testimony of the two FBI agents who don't think he was lying, if you look at what we now know about McCabe, who said, you don't need a lawyer, General Flynn, this is just an innocuous discussion, and then what do? They trap him in a process crime. Sean, everybody watching this show right now could be trapped in a process crime. I don't care how much of a Boy Scout you've been, everybody has a faulty memory. And you say one thing on Monday when you think you're in a friendly discussion with some fellow patriots, you think FBI agents, and then a week later, 2 weeks later, you remember it differently. That's it. You committed a felony because you have, quote unquote, lied to a federal agent. That's entrapment of General Flynn. And then we compare this to a man who secretly taped his conversations with his client. Think about that. Michael Cohen admitted he's a liar, and he's the kind of guy who has no qualms. The most sensitive thing a lawyer has is his relationship with his client, that exclusivity, that confidentiality. This man taped conversations with who knows how many clients. One of them is now the President of the United States. I know which man I believe, and it's General Flynn. I worked him in transition. I worked with him in the White House. He is a patriot, Sean.
You know, I don't, Jason Chaffetz, you are like me. We've talked about this. My mom was a prison guard. My dad had family court probation. So many people in the NYPD. So two guys made it to the FBI. Deity in my family. They were the highest of the high. Naturally, we are inclined, we want to help our FBI. But if you're in a situation now and you want to help them and you're risking, if you don't remember something properly, remember he was illegally surveilled, illegally unmasked, they didn't use minimization, and they leaked raw intelligence on this man. Nobody cares about the crimes that were committed where they literally had the transcript. So anything that's not perfectly matched up in an interview to the transcript means that's a lie. That's how they're going to view it. 33 years. This is how we're going to treat this man and tell him, advise him, don't have a lawyer. What does that tell people that instinctively, like us, want to help our FBI? Not these corrupt officials at the top, rank and file, good field office FBI agents that are protecting this country.
Well, look, my grandfather was a career FBI agent. We have a great affinity for the FBI, but the upper echelon, it is now well documented, the bias and the animus that they had. And we have a great deal of thanks for General Flynn. And you're right, 33 years of service. What's also very striking to me, though, Sean, is the difference in the way justice was played out. Because I was a very key player in what was going on in trying to get to the truth with Hillary Clinton and her email and the transfer of classified information to a non-classified setting, putting people's lives in danger. I mean, real lives in danger. And yet the 5 people around Hillary Clinton, they all got immunity agreements with no requirement to cooperate with the government, no ability for us, say in Congress or the Inspector General's office, to make sure that we could go back and get the truth about them. And then you contrast how the FBI was acting with Flynn and Cohen and others, and it just doesn't feel like justice is balanced.
Where is Horowitz on FISA abuse? Will we ever have an investigation into Hillary and the violation of the Espionage Act? Or let's say Dr. Gorka, forget me. Dr. Gorka has subpoenaed emails and he deletes them, wipes his hard drive clean, busts up his devices. Is he getting off?
Yeah.
I don't think he's getting off. I think he's going to jail.
I got the wrong last name.
Well, no, you support this president, so that
Right.
means there's a double standard. When is that? Where is that justice? Or do we not have justice or equal application of our laws in America anymore?
Well, it doesn't feel like we are having that equal application of justice. I know that the Inspector General is looking into the FISA abuse. That has expanded, and I don't think we're going to hear about it until the spring or so, because there's something like 1 million documents that they're probably having to sift through to get there. Now, once we have that information, the Inspector General can't prosecute. We have not had, Donald Trump has not had
shouldn't we have
an
had a
Attorney
special
General
counsel
for 2 years.
On all of these other issues?
Well, we should have a special
For example,
counsel,
uranium
yes.
one.
And we need a real Attorney General. Yes.
We gave Putin
both.
20% of our uranium, and we have to import it. The FISA warrant, where literally a dossier is paid for, Dr. Gorka, with Russian lies.
Not only that, I think the biggest story is still out there, and that's the unmasking. I mean, we've talked about, for 6 minutes, about General Flynn, a patriot who was trapped by a political use of the intelligence community and law enforcement. We know there are hundreds of Americans who were unmasked by the Obama administration. Why?
At a 300% increased rate.
Right, and then
in
what
2016.
happened just before the inauguration, the president says, oh, let's share all of this intelligence with 7 times as many agencies as we did before, because who knows, maybe we can bring down the presidency. That's what we're talking about. The politicized use, the weaponization of the intelligence community, and potentially hundreds of Americans are affected, Sean.
You know, and let's stay on that, because if we really cared about Russian influence in the election, which has now evolved into, well, Donald Trump may have committed a felony campaign finance violation, with no lawyer is ever going to buy into, intelligent lawyer that is, right, except for these crazy dumb TV pundits that are way overpaid and just incendiary in their hatred for 2 years of Donald Trump. So the question is, are we really going to allow somebody who paid for Russian influence with funneled money, interestingly, campaign finance violation perhaps, to a law firm, legal expense, not true, foreign national, Russian lies, fed to the American people, influenced the election, and money kickback in the uranium deal that was signed off on? You can't tell me that this is about Russia, because if it was about Russia, we would be after these issues. They're not after them. It's just like they only cared about Kavanaugh if he did something inappropriate, wrong. But they didn't care about Keith Ellison or Michael Avenatti. They didn't jump the gun in those cases, which means they really just care about the politicizing of these issues. Isn't that what it's about?
Yeah, look, if you were serious about this, you would go look at Mark Elias. He was general counsel with the DNC. He advised the DCCC. He was involved with Hillary Clinton. He was involved with the campaign. He was involved with Perkins Coie, and he was also involved with the Panetta Group. And so all of those ties, millions of dollars going overseas to attract this money, but you don't even get the sense that anybody is even sniffing into this. And it's just, that's where people, I just think, are losing trust, have lost trust in the justice system, because that was fundamentally wrong. It's millions of dollars spent to affect an election by engaging a foreign entity and foreigners to be involved in that campaign. There's so much material out there. And then you hear Mark Meadows talking about how they have whistleblowers on Uranium One, and they pass those on to the Department of Justice, and nobody
interviewed the
even talks to
whistleblower.
him.
He literally was within Putin's network in America, referred to Robert Mueller, then FBI director, blackmail, money laundering, corruption, kickbacks, bribery, all these things. Last word, Dr. Gorka.
The president could pardon General Flynn, and he'd make a great chief of staff, don't you think?
You just got the headline on media. I just want you to know. Well deserved. Good to see you. Congrats on the book, and same with you, Congressman. All right, we have a lot coming up tonight from D.C. More on the outrageous hypocrisy. Mika Brzezinski under fire tonight. Stunning, ridiculous, insane, corrupt, and homophobic comments about Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Tammy Bruce, Monica Crowley, and later, you don't want to miss this interview with our First Lady, Melania Trump, aboard an aircraft carrier in the Atlantic Ocean from earlier today. You don't want to miss this video. It is amazing. Straight ahead. All right, our interview with Melania Trump in a few minutes. The Destroy Trump media, they have sunk to a new low, as we mentioned in our opening monologue tonight. On MSNBC's Morning Joe show, co-host Mika Brzezinski was ranting about the U.S. relationship with the Saudis and called Secretary of State Mike Pompeo an anti-gay slur. Watch for yourself.
Understand that Donald Trump doesn't care. Heilman makes a good point. He doesn't care. But why doesn't Mike Pompeo care right now? Are the pathetic deflections that we just heard when he appeared on Fox and Friends, is that a patriot speaking? Or a wannabe dictator's butt boy? And I'm dead serious. I'm asking, are these the words of a patriot?
Are these the words of a patriot? Really? Questioning his patriotism? Ms. Brzezinski, on the other side of that, said she was sorry, tweeting, quote, totally agree with your super bad choice of words. I should have said water boy, like for football teams or something like that. Apologize to Senator Durbin, too. So sorry. Here to discuss this left-wing media hypocrisy. Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce, Washington Times columnist Monica Crowley. Look, let's be honest. Joe and Mika hate my guts. Fine, I don't hate them, but I just think they're insane. I mean, it is like a train wreck TV every day in terms of everyone on that show tries to outdo each other with Trump hate, Tammy.
Yeah.
But I'm not the thought police. I'm not the speech police. And something they would never do for a Fox opinion host is say, you know what? No, stand up when people try to boycott or stand up when people call for firings. I believe she's probably sincere in her apology. People do want to destroy her career over this. This is a problem we have in all of media. Maybe if you make a lot of mistakes, at some point, that crosses a line. What's your take?
Yeah, my column today in the Washington Times actually looks at the attacks on Kevin Hart and Mr. Murray, who won the Heisman Trophy, for remarks made years ago. And when Mr. Murray was a child. Mika Brzezinski is a middle-aged woman. She knows what she's doing. She's done television for a very long time. She's a sophisticated woman. That is a very specific phrase to use, not even just saying about it, whether it's about lifestyle or you use a word when you're a kid. She chose a phrase that was meant to dehumanize. And so that is going to speak about who she is as an individual. But at the same time, she apologized. Ultimately, she will be given a pass because she's a liberal. And whereas Mr. Murray and Mr. Hart will probably continue to be hounded. That's the difference, is that they will move along and they will be left alone. But others, there will still be an attempt to ruin their careers, to make their lives difficult. That is the problem here. And we've seen it all along. Usually if you're on the left, you do get a pass. And this is why we can see this as being not just hypocritical, but a determination to ruin people's lives by the left. Only conservatives are those who are not conforming clearly enough. And that's the message they want to send to everyone. She'll get a pass in the end on this.
And, you know, we see this with other issues involving NBC, the recent firing of Megyn Kelly, for example, for her comments, Monica. But you have people that actually have dressed that way that still have jobs there. When she talked about that, the issue she was involved in. And I'm saying people have a choice. And they don't have to, we have to do a good show and ask people to come in. If we can come into your home, and if we're honored if we get there, people don't have to watch any one show, except this one. That's the only one.
Well, you're pointing to the staggering double standard that's been in place for a very long time, Sean, and the only way it's going to change is by Tammy and you and me and those of us who are essentially targets of it or victims of it to continually to try to expose it. I'm not a fan of the word police. The word police easily morphs into the thought police, and that is a very dangerous road to go down. We're very far down that road already, and it is a form of tyranny and fascism. So I don't believe anybody should lose a job for misspeaking or for stating something and then apologizing. But that being said, those on the left have a long history of stating anti-gay slurs and anti-gay jokes. And then when they're called on it, they usually try to minimize it, usually with a cutesy kind of tweet, as Ms. Brzezinski did today, and pray that it goes away. And it usually does go away because, as Tammy points out, they have something not available to you, me, and Tammy, which is the protection of the mainstream media. So they don't get the pile-on that we do when we misspeak or when we make a mistake. Then our lives are ruined and our reputations are tarnished, but they get a pass and they're allowed to go forward. That double standard continues to be in place, and it needs to be exposed if we're ever going to hope to see an end to it.
Tammy, what you said about the slur part of it is right, too. Nobody seems to have also paid attention to the part, the things they say about Trump there every day.
Yeah.
They speak for themselves. Mike Pompeo is a patriot serving his country.
That's right.
He's done an amazing job as Secretary of State, creating amazing opportunities for peace in the world. Again, hard things to do. Amazing job as our CIA director. And I just say, you're questioning this man's patriotism with abandon.
And she was responding on Twitter with that apology to a fellow who's a verified blue check, who I think was a photographer, who suggested to her that it would have been better if she'd called Pompeo a traitor. So the left would prefer you to be called something that would require an execution, where you should be killed if you're a traitor to the country. That would be the legal punishment, as opposed to a gay slur. We don't want any of that. And look, if you're in media at any point in time, you've said something that you regret and that you do apologize for. Our point here is the hypocrisy on that end, is their desire to destroy other people under a guise of being a racist or a sexist or a homophobe. My first book lays out how all of that lives on the left.
I remember the book, yeah.
And that they apply it to the president especially, and that it's the name that is supposed to obliterate you. It's the hypocrisy with those individuals who don't even at least try to live.
Story from D.C. on this busy Wednesday. We'll see you back again tomorrow night in New York. Tucker's up next.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, the president has decided that the Republican Congress, during its final weeks in office, should fund a wall along our southern border with Mexico. That's not a new idea, obviously. Trump ran for office beginning 3 years ago on that very promise. Voters agreed with it. They elected him. Now he's demanding unequivocally that the wall finally get built. Now, at the same time, and this is not a coincidence, the American news media has identified the single most racist idea that anyone in the history of this country has ever come up with, and that is, of course, building a wall along our southern border with Mexico. Watch.
The president went to the heart of what I call his brown menace theory. These migrants, they're dirty people. They bring disease.
This border wall thing is about controlling the browning of America.
Donald Trump is fixated on the southern border, as he was the day that he announced this campaign. It is not about securing the borders. It is about xenophobic, racist, bigoted beliefs.
Well, so that couldn't be clearer. Border walls are racist. We know that. Unlike border fences are not racist. They're much easier to climb over. And that's why Democrats have repeatedly voted to fund them. You could have lots of border fences and still wind up with 22 million illegal aliens living in your country. We have proved that conclusively over the years. Fences are the perfect solution if you're trying to pretend that you care about border security while simultaneously encouraging much of the third world to move here without permission. Fences are awesome for that. Yay, fences. But walls, well, as Nancy Pelosi has explained, walls are immoral. According to CNN, in fact, walls are nothing less than an attack on the human heart. Listen and learn.
And a wall won't solve it. All that he's doing is putting up walls around people's hearts.
And we are not a wall away from being better.
Don't waste billions of dollars of taxpayer money in order to build something that will not make our border more secure.
Yeah, and that's the other point they keep making. Walls don't work. They're totally ineffective, except in prisons and the Vatican and outside Barack Obama's house here in Washington and in almost every upper-income neighborhood in America where walls surround the front lawns of the homes where Hillary Clinton and Beto O'Rourke hold their fundraisers. But along international borders, walls are useless. A border wall would simply create a thriving new market in taller ladders. Jeb Bush used to say that all the time. Everyone in power agrees with him. They're nodding vigorously from their gated communities.
We need border security. The wall is a part of border security. You can't have very good border security without the wall.
That's simply not true.
Just
that is a political promise. Border security is a way to effectively honor our responsibility.
And the experts say you can do border security without a wall, which is wasteful and doesn't solve the problem.
It's wasteful. Walls won't solve the problem. All the experts agree on that. And they have briefed Chuck Schumer, and he's passing on the news to us. Okay, but before we accept Chuck Schumer's claim about walls as fact, just one simple question. What about Israel? Israel is our closest ally in the Middle East. It is the recipient of our largest foreign aid package by far. Pretty much everybody in Congress on both sides supports Israel, or claims to. Many of them are vocal about that support, including Chuck Schumer. And yet, here's the funny thing. Israel has plenty of walls, and not just the famous one that people pray at. Israel has border walls, some of them tall and foreboding and made of steel. Are Israel's walls immoral? Well, by Nancy Pelosi's standards, why wouldn't they be immoral? It's a pretty obvious question, so we've asked it repeatedly of Democrats on this show. And every single time we get the very same answer to the question. Israel's walls have nothing to do with immigration. They're defensive walls. They're designed to keep out terrorists and suicide bombers. There is no comparison to Israel's wall and anything that Donald Trump is proposing. It's apples and oranges. Well, it's a pretty effective talking point, and that's why every Democrat repeats it every time. But is it actually true? We got curious and decided to find out ourselves from a knowledgeable source in Israel. A short time ago, we spoke to David Rubin. He's the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel. He's the author of the book Trump and the Jews. We had a fascinating conversation. Listen. Mr. Rubin, thank you very much for joining us. There's a debate in the United States, as you're fully aware, over whether to erect a wall on our southern border to solve what is an immigration crisis. Israel has relevant experience with this exact topic. Will you explain what Israel did in response to its immigration crisis and the effect that the wall had on it?
Well, we certainly do have that experience, Tucker. Between 2010 and 2012, there were 55,000 illegal immigrants into Israel. Now, you have to understand, Israel is a tiny country, so 55,000 illegal immigrants in just a couple of years is a lot of illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And most of them settled in southern Tel Aviv, which was already a working class or a little bit rundown area. The rapes and murders in southern Tel Aviv skyrocketed in those few years. The Israeli government, under pressure from the grassroots mainly, grassroots protests from the residents of South Tel Aviv and other towns that were being overrun by these illegal immigrants, the Israeli government made a decision that they were going to build a wall, a high-tech steel wall on the southern border, the border between Egypt and Israel. So it was built over the next few years. It was completed, almost completed by 2015. In 2016, the wall was up. 2016, there were 11 illegal immigrants who entered Israel. And then they raised the height of the wall an additional several feet. And in 2017, there was not one illegal immigrant that made it through the southern border into Israel. So
that is a remarkable story.
It works.
So was there
it's a story that's...
So I'm just wondering the political part of this. So the 55,000 illegal immigrants you're describing were from Africa, as I remember, Eritrea, Sudan, parts of Africa.
Correct.
Was there anybody in Israel who said, you're racist for trying to keep them out?
Well, there was some of that, yes. Some of the people on the left were going crazy and having protests, and they were complaining that it's a racist thing. But look, illegal immigration is illegal immigration. And I don't know if you know this, Tucker. I was born and raised in the United States. I've been living in Israel for 27 years. But the Jewish immigrants who came to America, and I wrote about this extensively in my book, Trump and the Jews, they came to America as legal immigrants. They came only to work hard and only to be full Americans. That was their goal. And so, I've heard people like Ocasio-Cortez from New York, the congresswoman, talking about how the immigrants, the migrants are just like the asylum seekers, the Jewish immigrants who are seeking to escape the Nazis in World War II. It's an obscene comparison, and I've heard it too many times from the left. So, yes, there was some in the Israeli left who were complaining and who were even accusing the Israeli government of racism, but the fact is that now nobody's complaining. Everyone is happy that we don't have illegal immigration to Israel.
That's an amazing story, and I hope that a lot of people watch this segment. Mr. Rubin, thank you for telling us what happened and your experience there. It's remarkable.
You're welcome, Tucker. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Jason Nichols is a professor of African American Studies at the University of Maryland and a frequent guest on the show, we are proud to say. Professor, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So you just heard that kind of amazing story. I didn't know that. Tel Aviv, 55,000 illegal immigrants living there. The working class residents of the town said, crime is going up, we're against this. Government of Israel builds a southern border wall, not to keep terrorists out, but to keep illegal aliens out. And no one in this country says anything. Is that immoral?
So I think there are lots of big differences between Israel and the United States. First of all, we know that crime has gone down in the United States steadily since 1991. Immigrants both legal and undocumented, commit fewer crimes than Americans like you and I.
I don't know. I don't think that number is true. But leaving that aside,
but that's absolutely.
I don't believe it is actually. I think immigrants in the country commit crimes at a higher proportion.
No,
legal.
that's
okay.
We can look that up.
Separate debate. Okay, I'll even grant you that you're right in that. But why is it? And by the way, I just want to be totally clear. I support Israel's right to protect its own borders. It's a country. It gets to do that if it wants. But why is it immoral when we do it here, according to the Democratic Party, but not immoral when our closest ally in the region does it?
Well, again, part of this is because of the motivation that Mr. Trump has brought into this discussion. Also, the fact that I think there were certain things that the mayor said that were inaccurate. If you look at at immigration to the United States in the early 20th century, whether it was Jews, Italians, other groups, crime actually did go up. They were blamed for everything. They were blamed, they brought Cosa Nostra. They were blamed for all of these kinds of things. But when we want to sanitize our historical memory.
That's right. I mean, history changes over time. And shut down immigration.
We say, they were just here to work hard.
Well, okay,
and I'm sure
it's all complicated. But what's not complicated is that our closest ally in the region, our biggest recipient of American aid, built this wall, and the same people who supported building that wall, I'm one of them who supported it, are now telling us that an effort to protect our southern border in exactly the same way is, quote, immoral and racist. And I'm just wondering, what is the standard?
Well, when you're going around and you're saying that the people from our South are rapists and that they commit crimes when you actually don't have any empirical evidence to back it up, it sounds pretty much like it's xenophobic and racist.
You don't like Trump. Which is
it's not about
totally
Trump.
Fine, but how about
I have no feelings about Trump.
How about just taking Trump out of it? His motives, what he says. A lot of people would like a wall on our border, and they're confused because they hear Pelosi and Schumer say, "Well, a fence is fine, but a wall is immoral. What is the distinction exactly?
Well, I think, again, that the fence is not, even a fence is not necessarily what is going to lead to border security. And I think you and I actually agree. I read your book, so
Right.
which is actually a fabulous book. But
Thank you.
I will tell you, when I read your book, the problems that exist with immigration, and I think Mike Pence actually has it correct, actually start in Central America. It's not at our border. So if we want to solve this problem, and if we're trying to stop, the things that the right talks about, the flow of drugs,
Right.
One of the things that many experts say is that a wall or fence or any of that is not going to stop that. They're going to fly drones. They're going to find other ways.
Then why did
around
it work in Israel? I mean,
we need to help.
We need to help them get better, those countries.
Within their borders, people oftentimes don't really want to be here. That's